Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we're going to talk about the city's budget process. I know it is a very long, drawn-out thing, and sometimes people get tired of hearing about it, but it is your chance to have input and help the city make decisions, because how we spend your tax money is partly your decision, and we want your priorities. So welcome, Brian Deprofio and Sunshine Torrey from our budget office. You guys are starting now on what the city likes to call CIP. I don't like acronyms, but it's what in business we would call capital spending.
Right.
Now, how does the process work? Where are you now?
Well, part of the process is soliciting input from departments as well as the community, and currently we're having input sessions with some of the stakeholder community groups around the community and getting their input as to what they want to see in the capital improvement process.
So before we get to the big public input, where people really mostly vote on, here are the projects that have been put on the table. You can still put a project on the table, but you're talking to, and when you say stakeholder groups, that's another one of those city buzzwords. Those would be, you've been to some of these. Who would you say our stakeholder groups
are mainly our boards and commissions. We go out to those groups and we kind of get their input for their certain area that they specialize in, so we can get some feedback in developing the plan before we take it out to our citizens.
So the business improvement districts, the neighborhood commission, the, I don't know who all else, Coliseum Advisory Committee. I mean, those people who are your kind of core volunteers who are part of developing the city policy as advisories to council will put out the things that they want to see.
Absolutely.
Correct.
And then, of course, departments who hear from citizens all the time will put their new projects on the table as well.
Correct.
That is correct. Most of the projects that we do receive from the departments have already went through some type of communication with our stakeholders, the boards and commissions that they work with, and some citizen groups as well before we get them. And then we go back and kind of verify and get additional input just in case we missed anything.
And some things are fairly technical, like a department might need a new software system, or we'll get to that in a second. But so some of those things are just sort of, you kind of have to do this. And then other things like Parks and Rec, I know, they have an advisory board, they have a lot of citizens who want a whole lot of stuff, whether it's new facilities or big revamps in some of the parks that we already have. So I'm just going to guess here that you have one or two more requests than probably we can afford to build.
Yeah, you always have more requests than money that you have available. And one of the things that we also do through the capital improvement plan is we repave roads, we maintain city buildings and city parks and recreation facilities. And also one of the big things that we did over the last few years through the community planning effort was identify projects to help with flooding, and so we have some projects that address that. And so there's a number of projects that are in there that may not be the most exciting things, but they're things that you really have to do to make sure that the city facilities are in good shape and deal with some of the issues that we face. Whether it be just flooding or whether it be new EPA regulations around stormwater and those sorts of things. So all those projects are funded through the capital improvement plan and are critical to moving the city forward.
So where do we get money for the capital improvement plan? Where does that come from?
The capital plan, often people get miscommunication as far as where we actually get the money from. It can come from a different type of sources. One, and our biggest source, we kind of describe it as your home mortgage, which are general obligation bonds. When you want to get a mortgage, you go get a loan for it. Certain projects qualify, it has to be over a 5-year time frame. So a lot of our projects are financed through general bonds. We also finance projects.
And that might be something like, the courthouse or a fire station.
Something big, yes.
Something big, okay.
Absolutely. We also use some money from our general fund. We call it kind of like our savings account. When we have a certain amount of money that we put towards the capital plan that comes from our savings account, that's the smaller portion of it. Another fund that we use are state and state and federal resources, as well as some grants help us to fund some of the capital projects.
And what's important to remember there is, if that's a grant for something specific, like highway funds, road maintenance or new roads, you can't move it. You either build the road that VDOT said you could build, or you don't get the money.
Yes.
So it's not always movable.
Right.
And then I'm going to say stormwater fee is one of the other big ones, because if the money comes in for a stormwater fee, you can't repair a park, you can't build a new tennis court, you can't do those kinds of things with it. It's really got to be in this box of certain things you can do.
And one other thing is the maintenance to school buildings as well are included in our capital plan. And so we have a lot of projects around that, as well as a couple of years ago, the council had raised taxes for additional investments in schools. And so some of those, like the iPad program, are funded through our capital plan.
And one of the things that threw me when I first started going to these capital meetings is that maintenance is considered capital. And it's not really maintenance, it's just what we call it, because maintenance is an operating expense and they take care of maintaining the buildings mostly. But when you have a big building that needs a new roof or replacement windows or a new HVAC system, those are spikes that you don't quite know when they're coming, and they can't come out of the annual operating budget. You have to work ahead on those. But that threw me. It's like, all this money for maintenance, why isn't that here? And then I think people are also confused because they don't always get to vote on what gets those funds. Those are determined by staff based on kind of critical priority. Like the school division has X amount of money for their major renovations, and you don't get to say, when you vote, I want my kid's school to get the money because they need it. It's more of an evaluative administrative process on what roof is leaking. And they have a long-term list. And so does the city for the city buildings. So what do we get to vote on when we get to vote? Because it's kind of a fun thing, really.
I think one of the things that we're really going to focus on is the year 2020. We have a 5-year CIP plan, and 2020 is a year that is not yet planned. The first 4 years have been previously dealt with. There may be some moving around for some critical projects that come up during that time period. But really what we're focusing on is 2020 and getting people's input on really what they want to see as that part of the plan.
And to some extent, I'm going to say it isn't just 2020, because you get the citizen priority in the new projects or parks, and you may not be able to afford them in 2020, but they kind of move up on the list because they're high priority. So when there are more dollars, at some point, you kind of know what that's going to be. Like new fire stations, I know they stay on the list. The WITH one is in the plan. I know they want Phoebus. I know they want more. But you kind of get this sense of what the community wants and what physical administrative facts there are. The trucks don't fit in the old, the gorgeous Art Deco fire stations aren't as functional as newer ones are.
And that's you're right on with that. Feedback is extremely critical for us. When we put the FY15 plan together, it included a lot of feedback from the citizens, and we were proud to actually take their input and ensure that it did go into the plan. So as we move forward, we'll be looking at what they provide us, looking to fill 2020, but also take into account what we put out there now and ensure that it aligns with what the citizens want as well.
And that's why, you and I worked on this last year, why we tell citizens you can pick 2 projects in this area. It's like kind of monopoly. So you get certain monopoly money, and you can pick 2 projects in this area and 2 here and 2 here. And they say, well, what if I want all of them over here? Well, you can't. I mean, first of all, you have to run a city, but second of all, highway funds have to go to highway. Stormwater funds have to go to storm. We can't afford 3 new parks. Sorry. So let's spread that out. But it's a hard thing as a citizen, because we tend to want those amenities and those quality of life things. And it's hard to remember, you're working on more infrastructure, economic development kinds of projects, because if you can't afford these until you get some more, these will help raise the tax base. So this is a little bit more of a long-term investment. So then what happens? You get all the citizens' input. How do you go back and balance?
Well, basically, one of the things that we do is we work internally with staff. We evaluate the citizens' input, and we try to make decisions as to how we can fit the things into the plan that really acknowledge that citizens have given us input and what they want to see in there and what we need to do as a city, and bring it to balance. And so it's a challenging process, but we enjoy having the city citizens participate in it so that we can make sure that we deliver a product that they're supportive of.
And sometimes I know the manager has said, we're going to pick projects that aren't popular with the citizenry. And that's because there may be a mandate. You know, maybe we don't want to do all this stormwater stuff, but the state and federal government has told us you have to do this. You have to reduce pollution. These are measures. I mean, you have a little bit of leeway within them, which ones you do or which ones you do first, but you have to.
Right.
So even if it's not popular, we're going to have to do that.
Right.
Pump stations aren't very exciting, for example. But if you don't have pump stations, you can't accommodate new growth, or you can't handle the amount of growth that you have.
Yeah. As I had mentioned earlier, there's a lot of stuff in there like that. You know, replacing roofs isn't very exciting. Replacing HVACs isn't very exciting. But there are things that we need to do to make sure that our facilities stay maintained. Repaving roads isn't all that exciting typically.
Oh, people care about that. I care about that. Yeah.
But you know, there are things that are different from doing a new park or a new community facility or anything like that. And so, but those are things that we have to do to make sure that the city is well maintained and that the roads work well and the buildings are sound
and you apply your own values and your own life to this, because everybody does this at home with their budget. Now, I know my roof needs to be replaced, and the contractors told me, I have 2 to 5 years. Well, I'm banking on 5 here, and then I'm going to spend the money on stuff that is a little more fun than a new roof. But when when you have to, you got to step up and do that. So you've got to have those contingency plans to make it all happen. So you guys work with a committee that helps evaluate and develop the dollars and balance the budget, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's where my role comes in. I get the pleasure of working with the Capital Improvement Committee, where they'll take all the submissions that we receive from the departments, the feedback as well that we'll receive from all of our stakeholder group and the citizen forum, and they'll put them all together and ensure that everything is aligned with where it's supposed to be. We'll start the ranking process, and citizen input and our stakeholder input is a big issue when we're putting together. We ensure that it's visible, and we can put the plan together and kind of align them to ensure that what we have is what we've heard and it complements, and anything that is outside of that we try to explain why. Some of the things that we can't avoid, like the stormwater issues or anything but the roads, that we try to put it out there so everyone is on the same page.
Now, you're going to end up having to tell a lot of people no, right?
Unfortunately.
I mean, in the submitted projects versus the actual amount of money available is, what's your balance there?
Little to none. We're in a tight year. As we know, revenues aren't going up as much, and that's across the country. We're still in a tough time here. So we have to take what we have and kind of, use it the best way that we can.
But again, we take those citizen priorities, and it helps us build to where we want to go. And it stays out there, and we know it's there, and we know what the needs and the wants are.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for coming by. And as soon as that citizen input date is available, we'll let folks know when they can come and give their input. And of course, if you can't come to the meeting, it will be online for a few weeks, so people can voice their opinions in the comfort of their own homes, or sort of works on your phone. Sometimes we have a drag and drop that doesn't work quite as well on your phone.
Excellent.
So thank you, Sunshine.
Thank
you, Brian. And thank you for watching. I know that the budget and the spending priorities can be a very complicated issue, but it really is about what we want for our community, what we need first, and then what also makes this a better place to live. So I hope you will come out and vote. Thanks for watching.